United Nations Security Council discusses latest developments in Yemeni crisis. The European Union confirms that the ongoing war has destroyed infrastructure of the country. Joint forces inflict considerable damage on Houthi militia in Hodeidah and Taiz. Welcome to Yemen Today TV. This is the English news with me, Rana Swaylam. The UN Security Council started a session tonight to discuss developments in Yemen. The session comes in light of the military escalation and Houthi attacks on neighboring countries. The Security Council is discussing briefings on the political, military and humanitarian situation and the crisis of Safer oil tanker. The U.S. envoy to Yemen, Tim Linder-King, warned that the situation in Yemen is catastrophic. He added that the Houthi rebels are obstructing peace efforts. Linder-King stressed on the United States' commitment to resolving the conflict and helping Yemen to recover. He added that the Houthis are trying to obstruct the political solution through their attacks on neighboring countries that lead to civilian casualties. The European Union said that more than 7-year-old conflict in Yemen has destroyed public infrastructure across the country. The European Commission for Humanitarian Aid explained that years of conflict have destroyed public infrastructure across Yemen and have deprived people of basic services. The Commission added that the European Union continues to provide full support to its humanitarian partners who are doing a tremendous job in providing assistance to the needy in Yemen. European Union mission in Yemen and officials in Doctors Without Borders discussed the need for accountability on violations of international humanitarian law in Yemen. The meeting focused on accountability amid shrinking humanitarian efforts. They asserted that the civilian infrastructures should not be a target. Redesignating the Houthi militia as a terrorist group is an international as well as local demand, in light of the violations made by the militia. The Houthi rebels continue to target civilians and inflict heavy losses on the country. More details are in the following report.
More than 90 local, regional and international civil society organizations have called on the United Nations General Assembly to classify the Houthi militia as a terrorist group. The organizations affirmed in a joint statement that the approach taken by the Houthi militia is a real danger to peace in Yemen, to building a modern Yemeni state, and a threat to international peace and security. They called on the international community to quickly classify the Houthi militia as a terrorist group, put it on international terrorist lists, and to place its leaders in front of the International Criminal Court. The joint statement indicated that the speedy response of the international community by classifying Houthis as the terrorist groups and prosecuting its leaders will contribute to the success of the policy of putting maximum pressure on the group to stop its crimes and will dry up its sources of support. It will also contribute to enhance peace opportunities and deliver humanitarian aid to those who deserve it. The statement stressed that the crimes that the Houthi group deliberately commits on a daily basis by bombing civilian objects and vital installations with ballistic missiles and drones, and the resulting killing and injuries to civilians, are crimes that amount to be war crimes. The organizations denounced the silence of the international community on these crimes, calling on it to issue decisions to ensure that Houthis' crimes will not be repeated in the future. They in addition pointed out that the Houthi militia has caused the deterioration of the humanitarian situation, starting with the increase in the number of displacement in addition to the victims of mines. They also pointed out to the recruitment of children that is carried out by the militia. The Houthis had recruited more than 35,000 children since 2014. They used schools, mosques and summer camps to brainwash children, train them and send them to the fronts. The statement confirmed that the Houthi militia has turned airports into military barracks and ports into launching centers for operations targeting the security and safety of the international navigation, noting that the group has a black record of targeting international shipping lines, booby-trapping boats, attacking commercial and humanitarian ships.
Transparency International confirmed that Yemen is among the countries that scored the worst results in the Corruption Perceptions Index for the year 2021. The organization explained in a recent report issued in 2021 that the war-torn countries scored the worst results. It cited that Yemen scored 16 points. The index ranks 180 countries by their perceived levels of public sector corruption. It uses a scale of 0 to 100, where 0 is highly corrupt and 100 is very clean. SAM Organization for Rights and Freedom said in a report that it had documented Houthi looting of public and private properties, which coincided with misleading campaigns. The organization added that the Houthi militia had confiscated opponents' money on the pretext that they are traitors. SAM said Houthi looting of property and private money has become a well-established methodology. It estimated that the value of the funds and revenues seized by the Houthi group for assets and real estate were more than $2 billion. The Houthi militia targeted Al Rawda residential area in the city of Ma'rib with a ballistic missile and a drone. Further, the artillery of the government forces shelled Houthi gatherings and positions of the Houthi rebels and inflicted them with losses in lives and equipment. The following report has more details.
Silence has prevailed various areas in the fronts of Ma'rib after fierce waves of clashes during the past period. A week and a half earlier, the battle stopped and the sound of shots disappeared, as if life was given indications that the Houthi rebels were exhausted in the outskirts of the governorate. On the other hand, the government forces and tribes were content with a military standstill in the fronts of Ma'rib, which doesn't lead to any serious results, while the people of Juba district are waiting to liberate their areas and return it from the Houthi rebels. A military transformation, however, draws attention again to the south of Ma'rib, as government forces and tribes launched an attack in Al-Falih and Radah areas. These areas are adjacent to Umarish camp. Government forces backed by tribes have also thwarted Houthi attacks in the same area. The confrontations have ended with killing dozens of Houthi militants, making new progress for the government forces and regaining new sites from the Houthis. Besides, airstrikes from the coalition also disrupted two militia groups and sites, where the militants were fighting fiercely during the waves of battles. Military observers see that the slow advance of the government forces on Umarish took longer than expected, while the situation of the militia is getting worse, something that might not be in the interest of the government forces and tribes if the combat operations continue at this pace.
To the west coast, where the joint forces inflicted human losses on the Houthi militia after a series of attacks on several fronts in Taiz and Hudaydah. The military media of the joint forces reported that the artillery had directly hit sites and hideouts of the militia in Maghbana west of Taiz and Al-Jarrahi south of Hudaydah. Dozens of Houthis were killed and 8 combat vehicles were destroyed in coalition raids in Hajjah Governorate, northwest of Yemen. The Arab coalition stated that it carried out 12 targeting operations against the terrorist militia on several fronts in the governorate. Coalition fighters continue their airstrikes on Houthi militia sites on many battlefronts in several governorates, inflicting heavy losses in equipment and lives. The joint forces thwarted 2 infiltration attempts by the Houthi militia in positions north of Al-Dala governorate. A military source said that the joint forces thwarted 2 attempts for the militia in Sabira and Al-Fakhr sectors and a camp in Qataba district. The source confirmed that joint forces surrounded Houthi militants who were killed or forced to flee. The International Organization for Migration said that more than 300 Yemeni families were displaced in a week due to the escalation of fighting. According to the IOM, the number of displaced people in Yemen has increased since the beginning of this year to 3,054 families, representing more than 18,000 individuals. Coming next. In violation of all human norms, Houthi militia continues its campaign to suppress the arts and artists.
لا امشي أمان. هذا هو محل استهداف الحواث الذين استهدفوا المواطنين وهم نائمين. هذا هو الصاروخ. من الساعة 4 ما سمعنا الضربة من الحوثيين في المخيم. هذا يعني استشهدوا أولاد عمي، هذا استشهدوا يعني أخواني كلهم، يعني شوف يعني الدم في الخيم. الدم في الخيم يعني في كل مكان، يعني رؤوسهم ما التقوش، الرأس ما التقاش، الرأس ما التقاش. الحمد لله بالحوثي.
Welcome back. Yemeni Minister of Planning reiterated that economic losses from the war exceed $126 billion. The minister confirmed that the war led to a contraction of the gross domestic product by about 50%. He pointed out that the deficit rose to about 15% of GDP in 2016. Taxes fell by 30% and oil revenues declined by 80%. Prices of oil byproducts in the city of Taiz have risen to a high record. Local sources in the city of Taiz said the fuel crisis is due to the failure of the Yemeni oil company in Aden to adopt an official quota for the governorate, in addition to the levies imposed on commercial fuel shipments. The owners of official and commercial gas stations in the city of Taiz accused leaders in the local authority of imposing illegal financial levies of about 200 riyals on each liter of gasoline. Yemen produces more than 21,000 barrels of oil per day as of 2016. The country is ranking 79th in the world. Oil exports amount to 40% of its oil production. More details are in the following report.
Yemen's oil and gas industry could be at a crossroads after 7 years of brutal war. Yemen pumped more than 400,000 barrels per day in the early 2000s, bringing much-needed revenue to the region's poorest economy. Since 2015, however, output has plummeted to below 100,000 barrels per day. The fractured country has seen fighting between the government forces and the resistance from one side against the Houthi rebels from the other, intensifying in the oil and gas-rich Ma'rib region and in Al-Waida province in the south. The violence has led to a devastating humanitarian crisis and prompted many international oil companies to flee. Those that remain have seen their operations further debilitated by the pandemic, with Yemen severely lacking medical resources. Yemen, at the southern end of the Arabian Peninsula, sits on proved hydrocarbon reserves of some 3 billion barrels of crude and 17 trillion cubic feet of gas, according to the U.S. Energy Information Administration. China is the biggest buyer of Yemeni crude, with Australia, Thailand, Italy, and the UAE occasionally buying some oil products. Without a significant refinery presence, the country is reliant on refined product imports for its gasoline and diesel needs. Any end to the war doesn't guarantee international oil companies would return, with security risks still high, political stability elusive, and much of the population impoverished and displaced by the fighting.
In Taiz, a shipment of 500 tons of onions was exported to African markets from the port of Mekha. The shipment is the first to be exported from the port after its opening in the middle of last year. Director of the Mekha port pointed out that the coming days will witness exporting other agricultural products to the African markets near Yemen, noting that the port of Mekha is also open to receive all imported and exported products. Aside from war and conflict, love still has its majesty on the people in Yemen as a whole and Aden in particular. A festival for love and loyalty was held to revive these meanings among people. The following report has more details.
The city of Aden witnessed the establishment of an open voluntary festival organized by the Foundation for Love and Loyalty to Aden. In the city of Aden, the activities of the 8th annual festival was launched as the largest open bazaar in the city in order to be loyal to Aden and revive the values of tolerance, unity, brotherhood, and help creators and owners of small projects to highlight their creativity and promote their products in order to improve their level of income.
The goal of this festival is to show that Aden is a safe place. Aden is welcoming all new things like we see today: music, free market, and food. We also want to support the project owners and the artists here.
Many participants in the festival had the opportunity to present the works they invented themselves using primitive artistic methods and materials.
I make natural soap. I have a laboratory at home and I create my own ingredients.
Amira is one of the people with special needs who found herself in this bazaar an opportunity to make money by drawing artistic shapes on the faces of children.
I'm happy to be here at the Aden Festival and to paint on kids' faces. I'm really happy to be here and I want to thank everyone.
Various shows were included in the exhibition and the participants took the initiative to display their products, in addition to displaying various drawings and paintings presented to the audience by creative youth and beginners whose goal is to display their creativity and motivate them to continue their activities.
This is a voluntary festival that includes small project owners. We are trying to support both men and women, especially during these hard living conditions.
Establishing such events that call for the encouragement of handicrafts and calls for peace and coexistence among the members of the same society is a positive step. This is especially in light of the difficult circumstances and the deteriorating living conditions that the country is experiencing, and also the suffering of the citizens ever since the outbreak of the chaos of the year 2011.
Houthis are suppressing artists and singers in areas under their control. Some artists were exposed to arrest and house raids on charge of not working under their authority. This report has more details.
Houthis do not allow any concerts, theater, and television series to be aired in areas under their control. Instead, they use billions of Yemeni riyals to recruit children and pay monthly salaries to the poor if they agree to join the battlefronts, a Yemeni actor said. The militia demands a guarantee from production companies that they will not sell their series to any channel that opposes Houthis. Also, stations that broadcast from abroad are the only ones that buy locally produced series, while the Houthis produce their sectarian programs. Yemeni theater and artistic troupes have thrived since the mid-70s. Yemeni actors and actresses became known among drama productions over the past few years. However, Houthi militia dealt a significant blow to the art performance, according to one of the few remaining producers. He confirmed that producing a tarab session with artists in militia-controlled areas could lead to punishment and imprisonment, as happened recently with the artist Yusuf al-Badji. Al-Badji was producing music sessions, but the Houthi militia raided his house and arrested him on charges of working with an opposing TV channel. About a week before this incident, Houthi militia raided a wedding hall in the Shamlan area, west of Sana'a, arrested the young artist Asil Ali, and imprisoned him for singing after 10 o'clock at night. Famous artists Fuad al-Kibsi and Abdullah al-Saadi were arrested and banned from entering Hodeidah. The militias resorted to another form of repression. They started collecting signatures from residents in Hodeidah, Amran, Hajjah, and Al-Mahwit, calling for a ban on singing at weddings. Similarly, public parties and graduation ceremonies in universities were banned in all Houthi areas. The militia's suppression of arts culminated in a circular issued by the Sana'a governor to the directors general of the directorates and head of local councils, ordering them to limit artists' performances at events and weddings. Officials in the Yemeni Ministry of Culture said that many artists were forced to leave the militia-controlled areas and settle in some Arab capitals, where they perform at Yemeni weddings or participate in art festivals. The militias forced the so-called Dawamil, sectarian war songs that glorify and call for fighting, and local radio stations and schools were obliged to broadcast them every day to help mobilize more fighters.
The National Committee Against Coronavirus recorded 20 new cases of the pandemic. Committee officials said that 37 recovered cases were recorded and 3 deaths. With the current updates, the total confirmed cases are 11,699, including 2,103 cases of death and 8,533 cases of recovery. Here's a reminder of the main headlines. United Nations Security Council discusses latest developments in Yemeni crisis. The European Union confirms that the ongoing war has destroyed the infrastructure of the country. Joint forces inflict considerable damage on Houthi militia in Hodeidah and Taiz. This is the end of the news. For more, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube at Yemen Today English. Thank you for watching. Have a great day.